Appointment, the show where we answer your legal questions. 540-0580. That's 540-0580. That's our talk line number. If you have a legal question, a legal concern, you want to talk to us about a property dispute, your neighbor's fence is on your property, your wife is just getting to be too much, you need to get a divorce, your husband's an idiot, I don't care, call in 540-0580. We'll talk about it. A little later this afternoon, we're going to have a financial advisor come on and talk to us a little bit about the financial aspects of the law and some of the things that when a lawyer works hand in hand with a financial advisor. We have Mark from Miras in Lancaster with us, so stay tuned. If you have some of those questions, save them till about 2:30. But in the meantime, if you have something, family law related, let us know. If you have something criminal, DUI, I don't know what you guys have all been up to. I did get one on Weekend Appointment, and of course, many of you know you can post your questions through the week on weekendappointment.com. I'll answer them as I go. Sometimes I wait to answer them for the show. Sometimes I post an answer. Got one here. I was told the U.S. Supreme Court made a ruling about clocking into work before changing into a uniform. I attached our company policy. It basically says they don't get paid to put on their uniforms. Did a little research for this fellow. He's right. The Supreme Court in 2005 said that the time it took for employees to change into required specialized protective clothing and safety gear constituted hours worked, and they should be paid for it. There's a little bit more to it, though. If you're an exempt employee, meaning like the boss, or you get paid salary, or you're not the or the manager, then you're out. You have to be a non-exempt or an hourly employee. And the law seems to say that uniform has to be something that wouldn't double as street clothing, and it's something you would be required to change into work at work. So it has to be both something you wouldn't usually wear as street clothing, and you have to be required to wear it. And then the final aspect is if it's very easy and quick to put on, then you don't get the charge, or you don't get paid for that time either. So in cases where people have just had to throw on like a blazer with a patch on it, or maybe a certain color overcoat or something, there's been no compensation for that. But hopefully that answers that fella. And I do have a caller here, 540-0580. I'll get your call in now, get you in the queue, and we'll answer your legal questions. Barbara, you're on WHP 580 with Carl Rominger.
Hi, thank you for taking my call. I had in the past about 8 months had been receiving phone calls from an attorney's office, a collection. They're apparently a collection agency, or being used as a collection agency for a mortgage company of which we don't have a mortgage. And they have been calling us constantly. And then apparently they were foreclosing on this property, and they actually sent paperwork to us at first. I called them again and said, "We are not who you think we are. Don't call me again. Don't send me any more paperwork." The next thing you know, there's a sheriff at my door posting sheriff sale, not for my property, but for another person's property at a totally different address. Now, I'm really ticked.
Oh, I would be too. They don't seem to be able to get it right, do they?
Well, they apparently don't want to get it right, and it's very, very frustrating, and it was very shocking to find a sheriff at my front door.
Have you given them anything in writing?
No.
Okay. So hopefully they would agree that you've called them and explained this to them.
Well, I've told them the numerous times that they called me, and the one time it sounded like a young man, he was trying to deliver paperwork to me, and I said, "I am not who you think I am. Do not call me again. Under any circumstances, do not call me again." It wasn't even 20 seconds later, the phone rings, and it was him again, and he apologized for having to call me again, but he wanted to verify my address.
Right.
And he gave me a totally different address. I said, "No, that's not me. Don't call me again."
Now, let me ask you a couple questions. First of all, any chance at all, I mean, are you related to this person they're looking for, or is there any reason why you can come up with why they're pestering you instead of the right person?
No.
Okay. So that's number one. Sometimes people complain, but then you find out, well, it's their son and he used to live there, or one of those sorts of things. Then it's a little easier to understand the confusion. Here, it sounds like they're clearly in the wrong, and I want to remind you, and I'll remind everybody else, as soon as you have a problem, always reduce it to writing. Because what happens is phone calls disappear into the air, and you say, I said this on the phone, and they say, well, we're not sure that's what she told us on the phone. And you're going to find a lot of these collections companies are staffed by front-end folks who really don't have a lot of control, and there's just a screen that pops up and tells them who to call next. So there may be some. In other words, you want to really get their attention. You want to send something in writing and make it clear, because then later, once you've documented that, and I'm not saying you couldn't having orally done it, but then you may be able to complain that they're harassing you and or unfairly trying to collect a debt that doesn't exist from you, and you may have some statutory causes of action against them. But that's why I say I always do it in writing early, because that way you kind of got them, because you can say, hey, I notified you clearly and unequivocally. Because remember, your version of the conversation and the front end guy's version of the conversation, the notes he or she takes, or may not line up with one another.
Right.
So, but yeah, absolutely, that's a problem, and I don't know why they're doing that. But now, of course, you let the sheriff know that guy wasn't there, right?
Absolutely.
What the sheriff think?
Well, he's asking me exactly what properties we do own and where they are, and he's trying to get details. And I kept saying, look, Mister. You really have the wrong people, and you just really need to take it back to this attorney's office and tell them to never contact us again.
Right.
Get it straight. So,
of course, Barbara, I got to remind you two things, which is, and it was two things, it's the same thing, but just like with a lot of criminal defendants and a lot of people getting civil process, they always say, "No, that's not me." So it's hard for the sheriff or the police officer to go and just take you at your face value on that, because if they did, 9 out of 10 people would tell them, that wasn't me. Yeah. That's not me. No, he's doesn't live here anymore. So yeah, they have to be a little skeptical. But sheriff was probably polite and probably took that information back for you.
He was very polite, and then he took all the paperwork that he had with him, and I thought about that, and I thought, no, you know what? I want copies of that paperwork. That has my name on it, and I want copies of that paperwork. So I called the sheriff's office, and they kindly did send me copies of all that paperwork they had from the mortgage company and the attorney's office. Right.
And what you're dealing with, there are some law firms that have developed what I call collections practices, where they have, a large front-end staff, and they become very impersonal, and I've dealt with them because when we're doing bankruptcies for other clients or we're dealing with divorce situations and we have to call one of these collections attorneys' offices, their front end doesn't seem to know what the back end's doing, and I've found some frustration with that as well. I usually write them a letter that says, I'm not going to talk to your, quote, paralegal. I'm not going to talk to your friendly person that I punch in an account number for. You put an honest-to-God attorney on the phone or go away. And a lot of times that helps because you get the file kicked out of their automated system and into somebody's actual hands.
Uh-huh.
Well, Barbara, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you might have a suit. It sounds like you got rid of them. If they come back, though, go get them.
Yeah. It just it really angered me and upset me, and it was just very frustrating because they just didn't seem to
get it.
They just didn't seem to get it, right. And when you're coming to a totally different address to file a foreclosure on a different address.
Right, on a different address entirely.
Doesn't that just sort of ring a bell that maybe this is not the right place?
It certainly does. Certainly does. I don't know what to tell you. All right, Barbara. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Folks, Carl Rominger here, the show's weekend appointment. My talk line number is 540-0580. It's 540-0580. When we come back from the break, we'll take more calls, and we'll take some more questions off of weekendappointment.com. Welcome back. Carl Rominger here with Weekend Appointment, show where we answer your legal questions. 540-0580. That's 540-0580. That's the phone number. You're going to punch into your phone if you want to call in and ask us a question. And again, go to weekendappointment.com. Don't forget, you can get your free will kit there. You can download it, get a real live will. So if you're a first time joining us and you didn't know about that and you haven't taken advantage of it, or you're like a few other people who've downloaded it and haven't got around to sending it in yet, get it done. All you got to do is become a registered user, and it's completely free. Take a call here. Remember, 540-0580. Jim, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger. Are you there, Jim?
Carl? Yeah, Carl.
Yeah, what's going on, brother?
I am calling about a citation that my wife received for pulling off the brim of the road, turning into a restaurant. She passed 4 cars that were, before the red light.
Right.
And we got a $109 ticket. Now, that doesn't sound right to me. Am I wrong? Or
He's saying she passed on the right.
yes, on the brim, she was turning into a McDonald's.
Let's see.
And I've done that numerous times. I've seen numerous people do that numerous times, and I just don't know if he was having a bad day or what.
I know that as a general rule you're not supposed to I know as a general rule you're not supposed to pass on the right.
Right.
But I'm trying to think if the other line of traffic stopped, because I do this to get into the Turkey Hill from time to time down in Carlisle, because you approach the intersection. A lot of times that's the only realistic way you're going to get in.
Right.
You know what? I don't know. Let me see here. Let me see if I can find the statute. Now, yeah, I don't think I can pull that up right now. Here's what I'm going to need you to do. Can you go to weekendappointment.com and post that question?
May not be able to do it till later tonight.
All right. Well, if you do it later tonight, what I'm going to do is I'll pull the statute on that, and we'll get to the results for that, and I'll see what the statute says, and then I'll give you kind of an opinion as to whether or not you should fight it.
All right, that's what I'm looking for. Now the WHP.
You can go to WHP580.com, but you got to click through to weekendappointment.com.
Okay.
So it's just like weekend and appointment, 2words.com. And, you or anybody else has a question on a ticket or anything like that, there's areas on there to post. But just post it under questions for Carl, all right?
Okay. Yeah, I saw your pretty picture on there, so
I don't know if it's pretty or not. I don't know why, you get stuck getting those photos taken. I'm hoping to get, maybe this fall we'll get one with a deer in it and we'll stick that up there.
Yeah, I know. All the photos on there just don't look like they're top of the line.
Hopefully they touch me up and make me look better, Jim. All right, brother.
Hey, thank you very much, Carl.
All right. Trust me, I have a face for radio. 540-0580. 540-0580. That's our talk line number. And, of course, I was just directing Jim to weekendappointment.com, which a lot of you know about. I also want to remind you in the second half hour, we're going to have Mark Ferenges here from Miras Financial Partners in Lancaster. They're a full-service financial firm, and he's going to help us if anybody's got some financial style questions. We're going to talk a little bit about how the law interplays. One of the things, and that brings up one of the questions I got here. Guy calling himself Bar Hut. I hired a person to clean my house. I have disabilities and can't do this myself. Am I able to report the monies paid to them on my taxes to the IRS? The amount thus far is over $1,300. And a 1099 is used, correct? Thank you. My answer is 1099 is the correct form to file for your vendors, because I know that from having a business that we have to file 1099s for people we send money to if we want to deduct it. But I just know that because that's what we have to do, because you know who tells me to do that? My CPA. So my answer was I have no idea if you can deduct it or how. That's a question for a CPA. Remember that tax issues, financial issues overlap with the law. And there are tax lawyers, but as a general rule for your day-to-day concerns, and I'm not talking about Jackson Hewitt, H&R Block. I'm talking about a real honest-to-God certified public accountant. They will help you determine what things you can and can't deduct and help you develop strategies to do that. So quite frequently when somebody comes to us and says, Carl, I'm opening a business and here's what I want to do and I'm going to be a partner with my sister-in-law and here's the plan, one of the things we do is say, who's your CPA? And they say, well, I don't know. I didn't have one yet. And they say, well, we need to talk with the CPA because we need to figure out what kind of tax treatment you want. So the CPA actually tells the lawyer how to set it up. Not how to do the incorporation or not how to file a C Corp or an S Corp or how to do those things, but rather which one that the accountant thinks is most appropriate and how we're going to structure it for your particular tax situation. So I just want to point that out, that remember that lawyers interplay quite heavily with other professionals. So if you want to plan your finances in a right way, usually you would have a financial planner and you would have a lawyer and they would work hand in hand with one another. Mike, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger.
Hi, who are we speaking to?
This is Carl Rominger.
No, what'd you say it was an attorney?
Mike, do you know why you're on the air?
Yeah, I do. Did I hear you say attorney?
Yeah, who you calling in for?
I was calling in to just make a comment about money. Are we talking about that, or did you change that?
Well, what do you want to say, Mike?
I don't know. I lost my train of thought now. You messed me up.
All right. Whoa, I don't know what happened with Mike. Shane, where did we get that guy? What did he originally want? Do you know?
He just called in and said he had a question. I just thought it was about being an attorney. I mean, it sounded legit.
Yeah, all right, we'll do. All right, remember, 540-0580, 540-0580. The answer there is maybe, since we're confusing people, we're going to talk a little bit about the interplay of finances and the law. So if he had a question about money, I guess he should have shot, and we would have answered it. But again, in the second half here, we're going to have Mark on with us from Mirus Financial Partners in Lancaster. And I know that he's situated conveniently downtown down there for people in that area, but I know he does work for people all around the mid-state. I also had an interesting one here. Somebody posted on weekendappointment.com a question about property lines. This comes from Penns Woods. And let's see, what'd she say? I'm trying to research my property lines without bringing in and paying for a survey team. Well, you know what? You got to use the surveyor. That's what the lawyer says. And this is another great example. You got to have a surveyor because deeds describe things, maps show things, but only the surveyor can translate that to the literal physical ground and then give us a good engineering diagram to show where the outbuildings and the fences are and the right-of-ways and how they relate to the actual lay of the land. And I point out in a post that I answered on weekendappointment.com that the surveyors come with something called surveyor's notes. And so our surveyor's notes aren't really recorded at the courthouse, but a lot of surveyors have information that courts will listen to when necessary to help determine and fill in gaps that aren't adequately explained by the actual written records found in the courthouse proper. So keep in mind that if you really want to know what's going on with your property, get a survey. Does two things, too, by the way. Down the road, when somebody else goes to buy your property, you can show them the survey and they can feel assured that there's been a recent check of exactly where everything is, if that makes sense. So keep that in mind. Get a survey. I also had, I had another one on here that I really wanted to touch on, and it was, let's see here, street drain problem. And I don't know if we touched on that last week or not, but they have street drain problem. Every time it rains, it's susceptible to flooding. And the short answer is, yeah, you need to get that addressed. And if it's the township, technically they're tough to sue, but I think you could force them to remedy the problem if your land is going to continually flood. And that was from Linda, again, on weekendappointment.com. I want to keep Shane, we just have a question. Is that does he want to come on the air, or does he want to? He just wants the answer. Okay, we got a caller. I'm not going to bring him on the air, but he wants to know what my office number is. Well, you can get the office number at weekendappointment.com, but I have heard that a few of you don't have internet access. So this is not the talk line number. The talk line number is 540-0580. But the office number, if you want to get me in my private office throughout the week, it's 241-6070. Of course, that's in the 717 area code. That's 241-6070.
If you could also tell them, where would you find that on weekendappointment.com at?
Well, that's a good question. You can find it under Contact Carl, under Questions for Carl, and then anywhere that I've answered it's in my profile as well. So if you click on my profile, and it's also in my signature on any post that I've answered, you'll find the phone number. So hopefully that'll help folks. And again, throughout the week, and I'm not always in the office, but we have 3 other lawyers who I trust and work with who can help you out as well, and you can get them at that number as well. It's 717-241-6070. Our talk line number, of course, is 540-0580, so don't confuse the two, because during the week, if you call 540-0580, you're going to get RJ or Bob or maybe Rush Limbaugh if you're really lucky. Let's see, who we got, Shane? Maxine, you're on WHP 580 with attorney Carl Rominger.
Hi.
0580, you're going to get RJ or Bob or
Hey, turn your radio down.
Okay, will do.
Got that radio down?
Yes.
I can still hear it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Maxine, you got to turn your radio off.
I turned it off.
All right. What's your question?
My question is, I was on unemployment, and I was laid off from my full-time job after 36 years and a part-time job that I held for about 20 years on and off.
Okay.
Well, right before I was laid off from the full-time job, I signed on to a part-time job, and I was totally distraught after losing my full-time job. And 2 days after applying for the part-time job, I was told that my full-time job, they were closing the plant.
Okay.
So I was on unemployment, and the part-time job, I was still in training. After about 14 hours of training in a 2-week period, I couldn't handle the possibility of being attacked by a client. And unemployment cut my funds, and they reported, or the part-time job reported that I was working 30 hours a week, and I was only in training for 14 hours in a 2-week period.
Okay.
Okay, what can I do about that?
Well, did you appeal that decision?
Yes.
And have you gone in front of anybody yet on that?
Not yet.
Okay. Short answer is if you left for a necessitous, and I'm trying to remember the magic language they use. But if you had a reason to separate from that employment or you couldn't do it and the employer wasn't able to accommodate you, then that shouldn't be a problem.
Right.
Does that make sense? I'll give you an example. If you have a medical condition, if I can't lift more than 40 pounds,
right,
the boss says, I don't have any work for you that doesn't involve lifting at least 60 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell him about it. And he says, listen, I can't, I mean, I know it's a medical problem, but I can't have you here anymore. As long as I gave him a chance to accommodate and it's outside of my control, then generally speaking, that shouldn't affect my unemployment compensation rights.
Okay. I don't know what they told them, but I did appeal, so I'm waiting for a hearing date.
Yep, go to the hearing, and I'll tell you, if you're really concerned about it, I strongly recommend you hire an attorney. We represent employers and employees at that, and many times when one side's represented and the other side isn't, or if the employer has a skilled human resource person representing them who knows the rules of the road at those hearings, they do follow rules of evidence and your life can be made miserable.
Right.
All right, Maxine, good luck.
Thank you.
I got to go into a break here. Talk line number's 540-0580, 540-0580. You know, Shane, I sometimes think we have a marijuana theme going on in this show. I can't figure out why, but some of the songs seem to... Or is it just that all that modern music these kids listen to is about marijuana?
Hey, man, these are all from your time, aren't they?
Yeah, this one is from my time.
I'm throwing this one on you. I'm throwing the blame to your generation on you.
Oh, little Tom Petty, folks. Carl Rominger here, show's weekend appointment. We're answering your legal questions. 540-0580, 540-0580. All right, 540-0580, back to serious business here again. Now, I'm going to bring Mark Virgenis on the air here. I hope I'm saying his last name right. Mark.
Very good, Carl. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Tell folks a little bit about what you do so we know who we're dealing with here.
Sure. Name is Mark Virgenis. I'm an independent financial advisory firm located in Lancaster City. Independent in the sense that I sit on the same side of the table as the client. So I'm not rewarded by other companies or insurance companies or anybody of that nature. I do comprehensive financial planning for folks and investment advisory. So basically we try to lay out their financial roadmap for them and their loved ones, and then we try to monitor and carry it through. So whether it's insurances, investments, what have you, or just plain old advice, That's what our firm does. And from the legal community, the word MIRUS, M-I-R-U-S, MIRUS Financial Partners. MIRUS is Latin, which means exceptional, above all others, astonishing, if you will. And the financial partners, we worked, I think you talked about in your first half hour, how if you have a tax question, get a tax professional. If you have a legal question, get a legal professional. So we pride ourselves on the word partners in the sense that if folks don't have or don't know where to go to get an answer that's not within our discipline, we could certainly hold their hand and take them where they need to go and get the right advice and the right answers.
Yeah, and I was kind of trying to help people understand that, and I'm glad you touched back on that really, your best results come from teamwork amongst numerous or multiple professionals if each one's doing their specialty. And I know even in the medical field, I've observed, because of the personal injury work we do, it's not one they don't fly you to a trauma center and one doctor puts you back together again like a hero. It's a team of doctors, nurses, and folks that make it all happen. And so we work regularly, as you know, with folks like you to try to put together comprehensive packages for folks.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, I think one thing that's come up a few times on the show, and maybe I'm just hitting you out of the blue with this, so tell me if I am, but we get a lot of calls, questions about, Grandpa's 83, and it looks like he's going to have to go to the nursing home, so can we deed the house over to the nephew real quick, and how's that going to work? And it seems like there's been no financial planning for succession and for long-term care. Do you get involved with some of that?
Yes. Again, we would definitely bring in an attorney like yourself or an estate planning attorney just to make sure we cross the T's and dot the I's. But whenever you, in this sense, use your example, when Grandpa gives, you use the word gives, I would use the word gift, G-I-F-T. When he gifts that house, he's changing ownership. He's physically giving that by a legal entity as well, because he's going to change the ownership to nephew. The IRS has rules on how much one can gift, and you can gift up to $12,000 a year, no problem, to as many people as you want. So Grandpa could write checks for $12,000 to anybody that walks by, and there's no problem. But there's something called a credit, and everybody. In 2009, we can go ahead and give $3.5 million away. Well, $3.5 million is our credit. So if we're worth $4 million and we die, 3.5 is exempt from federal estate tax, or as was in the last election, everybody was calling it the death tax. $500,000 would go through the tax ringer for Uncle Sam. So depending on how much that house is worth, Grandpa might have just gave his nephew a sizable sum, a sizable house, and by the same token, when he gave that house, which he wanted to keep in the family, and he was worried about the IRS and the state and maybe even attorneys getting their hands on it, he might have just ruined the family legacy scenario, because something that's near and dear to your practice probably is divorces.
Right.
So, he might give it to the nephew, but now that's a marital asset to that nephew's estate. So now basically half the house is his wife's, the nephew's wife's. So there are complications here when I say I just want to hurry up and go give it to the nephew. You might want to sit back and take a deep breath and get some legal counsel or at least some financial counsel on before you actually put pen to paper. And the IRS has actually said there's something called deathbed transfers. If there's a terminally ill patient and they know things are going to happen in the very near term, and all of a sudden there's a fluster of legal documents getting signed and dated and notarized, again, that's an issue for a good estate planning attorney to take a look at, or actually to handle for you, because you don't want the IRS to think that you're just doing this to escape or circumvent them, because the IRS is, I call them a pit bull with a dog with a bone in their mouth. They don't let go.
Right. Don't let go. Now, if anybody wants to talk with us, Mark, the talk line number is 540-0580, 540-0580. Anyone wants a question for Mark? I guess I saw it not too long ago, and you just talked about these unintended consequences. A lot of times people add themselves, as joint owners with right of survivorship to an account I'll use Grandpa again, or Grandma. And, of course, even though that money transfers at death automatically, at least Pennsylvania Department of Revenue for inheritance tax purposes takes the position that, one half the value of that jointly held asset is taxable. Mm-hmm. I just saw one actually with a client where she decided to put her mother as a joint owner on an account of hers for reasons we couldn't quite figure out, but that ended up creating a tax for money that had never belonged to her mother.
Yeah, I mean, in two, you look at if mom would predecease her, she may have to pay Pennsylvania inheritance tax to get her own money back.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. So sometimes, people are walking in to the bank and they ask the bank teller, who might have been working there, for 4 days or 4 years, who knows, and says, hey, I want to put my mom on as a joint owner of my bank account because I'm going to be doing some traveling or what have you, and I want to make sure mom can pay my cable bill, my light bill, and my rent or my mortgage or whatever, and that's fairly common and fairly sensible, but no one really takes the step back and says, what if, and what if mom got divorced? Or what would happen is that since mom is joint owner of that bank account, then I guess that's a marital asset, and half that money in that bank account's hers. I mean, we're seeing 2 and 3 times people getting married now, second and third marriages, where there may not be a sibling has an attachment to the stepdad or what have you. So yeah, you just need to take a step back. I mean, we were talking about this earlier during the break, Carl, but qualified plans, IRAs, 401ks, and so forth. When people get divorced, people think that, well, that's my
right.
401k. My husband didn't put any money into that. That's my money. Or the husband says, wife shouldn't get anything for this.
Yeah.
I'm the one who worked at the company and got the company match and the profit sharing. Why is she getting this money?
And Mark, I can tell you when people say that to me, because they do routinely say that to me in the divorce. When we're doing the divorce intake and we're going over the law, people say that to me, and then I have to look at them and say, well, it doesn't exactly work like that.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not Sarah or joking. We joke, folks, because we've heard it so many times. We're not joking because we think it's funny.
Right, and I mean, it's just and I've seen that where married couples have dutifully through the course of the marriage. Well, I put the car in my name, and he put the house in his name, and the retirements are in our. So we've already sorted it all out. So there really shouldn't be a big fight here, right? I mean, I don't know why my crazy ex-husband to be is saying there is. And then you have to explain that all those things are on the line. Now, do you get involved with helping with the QDROs?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times someone will say they have them, or hey, we need you to value this for us, and here's the length of time, and give us what the stock market would have done, and so forth. Or a lot of times, a lot of law firms have someone they just go to on a regular basis to do an actuary number on that retirement plan. And why don't you explain to them what you just said with the initials, with the quadro?
Yeah, the Qualified Domestic Relations Order is basically an order of court that can sever or separate the retirement between the parties. And so, because I always run into this, I mean, I'll explain it. People say to me, well, I can't take money out of the 401k. There'll be a tax penalty. And I'm like, well, you don't have to take money out of the 401k. Right. We can divide it by court order, which is what these quadros do. And same with pensions. We can split naval pensions. We can split, most pensions. Now the federal, there are some exceptions for the federal stuff where they don't call it a quadro. They just call it a domestic order or domestic relations order instead of the qualified. But maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on what I'm saying. But the idea is actually, Mark, why don't I go into break? When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the quadros. Hey, welcome back. Carl Rominger here, Weekend Appointment. My talk line number is 540-0580. 540-0580. We've been talking with Mark Virgenis about various financial planning aspects and the interaction with lawyers. Mark, I still got you on the line?
Yes, you do, sir.
I tried to pick you up during the break there. I want to tell you, the quadros or something that... as a lawyer, I often find are problematic because every pension, every entity out there has their own kind of thoughts on exactly how it should be written. And we even have times like with the Teamsters pension a few times where we've asked them what they want us to do. We do it, and then we get a different person who says, well, we want you to rewrite it just a little bit. But
I get that a lot too, and that's, pensions, they are still out there. A lot of unions still have them. The 401k is fairly common. Almost, folks out there have a 401k with their employer. Typically, they just go to their HR person and say, listen, everything we talk about here is private and confidential, and that HR person is supposed to act that way, and most of them do. And say I'm getting divorced, and I got this quadro from the court. My husband, my soon-to-be ex-husband, needs to give me X dollars out of his 401k. Is there a form I need? So typically, if you're receiving the money, let's just say you have your money at Fidelity, just to pick a company. If you have a Fidelity 401k, Fidelity has a form that you would submit to the other employer, or when the money comes over, your HR person would submit that check to Fidelity. And again, you want to go from custodian to custodian, meaning you want it to go from, they have it at Vanguard at that employer, and now you have it at Fidelity here. You want the check made payable for the benefit of, and I'm sure the court will watch over that and make sure that's handled properly, because you yourself don't want to physically have the check in your possession, because that might be construed by the IRS as a distribution from a retirement plan, and then, going back and asking the IRS for forgiveness versus permission is a little bit difficult.
And Mark, we've had that come up too, where people have come in and they say, well, we already divided the 401k. And I said, well, how did you do that? Well, I took half of it out and gave it to...
Well, you must be happy because the fees in there just went up.
Right. Yeah. And you're saying, why would you do that? And maybe that's a good point while I've got everybody's attention. If you're in the middle of a divorce, thinking about a divorce, sit down with the lawyer first before you start distributing any property, because a lot of times you can kind of do things backwards and maybe make it harder. Andy, you're on WHP 580 with Mark Verzenis and Carl Rominger.
Yes. Hello. I had a question about a 401k. If I'm working for a company and say I make $28,000 a year, if I put 50% of what I earn into a 401k, and I turn 62, I take Social Security, and then because I put half of my money I make into a 401k, would that make my income $14,000 to consider for the Social Security, where if you make over $15,000, if you make $2 over, they take one back?
No, you're right. This is Mark, by the way. What you're doing is you're trying to drop your base income the way the IRS sees you, and you're doing it the right way. And you're saving first, and I guess what you're trying to say is you're going to do the catch-up provision, because you can only put $15,500 in the 401k, but then again, you can add to that. You can do a catch-up for people listening. You can add $5,500. So basically, what this gentleman's saying, he could put $22,000 away in a 401k himself, not counting what the company will go ahead and match. But for the eyes of the IRS,
it would be up to 50%.
No,
they match like 3%, but you're allowed to put 50% of what you make into the 401k. So if I make $30,000,
right,
and I put 50% into the 401k,
correct,
I could get Social Security at 62.
Mm-hmm.
But when they calculate the amount of money you make, would that be $15,000 or $30,000?
It would be the $15,000 plus. They would also calculate. They would add in the Social Security income that you're receiving in that year as well.
Oh, they would?
Yeah, because President Clinton passed when he was in office, taxation on Social Security, and there's thresholds each and every year, and those change, where your Social Security can be taxed at 50% or at 85%.
Mm.
And so a lot of folks who are looking, and that's, in fact, you can go on the Social Security, you can go on the IRS's website, or I believe it's socialsecurity.gov.
Yeah.
And Social Security has a really nice little calculator. Actually, very easy to use, very self-explanatory calculator. And you can decide whether you want to take the money at 62, 65, 67, and you can play around with it. And it gives you the crossover points. And, basically, if you took it at 62, how many more years would you have to live to get the benefit out versus wait until you're 65 or 66?
Yeah, because it's 17 years, I think.
Excuse me?
So, but I just thought that if I put 50% in, I didn't know Clinton passed that because I always thought they were for the middle class, Democrats. But I guess I thought that. No.
Yeah, I mean, if you make over $34,000, I can tell you this much in 2009. If you make over $34,000 and you're receiving Social Security, your Social Security is going to be taxed at 85%.
Okay. How about if I have a state pension?
If you have a state pension,
$1,000 a month first. I had worked for the state.
Yeah, you didn't contribute to Social Security when you were working for the state, so that's a little bit different. I'd probably, again, I want to give you the answer, but I'd rather defer that to an actual tax professional now because now we're getting to state pension. I need to have my actual software in front of me to be able to give you a good answer, and I don't have that right now.
All right, Andy.
Feel free to give me a call off air.
Thank you.
Bye.
You know, Mark, and that's a great example. Again, I mean, he's got a lawyer on the air, he's got a financial planner on the air, and now he probably needs to get a CPA on the air at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, because there's one thing about tax law, it's an ever-changing animal. Case in point, real quick for you, is next year in 2010, in a gift for everybody out there listening, the government is allowing anybody and everybody to go ahead and take their traditional IRAs and convert them to a Roth IRA, which, as most people know, they have to pay the income tax when they do that. However, if you do it in 2010, Uncle Sam's giving you 2 years to pay the tax. So if you have $100,000 and you're converting it in your 30% tax bracket, to make it simple, that's $30,000. You'll have, $100,000 goes into the Roth IRA, but Uncle Sam wants $30,000 from you. Well, you don't have to pay that in 2010. You don't have to pay that till April 15th of 2013.
Okay.
You can start saving and cutting and what have you, but I'm a believer if you're going to convert to a Roth, you better have the money outside the IRA to pay the taxes for the Roth, or I can't see how that's a wise move. But I could talk with people up there if they want to give me a call or hit my website. Feel free.
We did put you up on weekend appointment under Friends of the Show section. Alan, you're on WHP 580 with Carl and Mark. Alan.
Hello?
Yeah, Alan, you're on the air.
Okay, this may sound like a greedy question. My wife and I are fully retired. Our income is Social Security, Veteran Administration benefits, and military retirement. Is there any way any of that can be sheltered? The taxable portion.
Tell me again where the income is you have coming in. You have a military pension. Where else?
Alan, what do you got? List that stuff again.
Okay, we have Social Security, VA, and military retirement. A good bit of it is not taxable, but some is. I was wondering, is there any way we can shelter any of that?
No, I mean, those are benefits coming to you right now. I wouldn't believe so.
I'm going to hang up and listen to you on the radio because you're breaking up.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Alan Alan probably started out his own question the right way. This is greedy. And I guess what you're about to say, I mean, let me guess, is that, current income, it's current income and it's going to be taxable.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting a payment from somebody else. It's not like he has the corpus or a large sum of cash, and he needs to take it in when he wants. He's already got an income stream. That income stream is going to be taxable. All right,
Mark, I put your contact information up again with Mirus Financial Partners in Lancaster. I got to let you go. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, and have a great weekend,
all right,
everybody.
Folks, don't forget to go to weekendappointment.com. Don't forget to go to weekendappointment.com. I will see you next Saturday at 2 o'clock.